Let's talk startups. What are the mistakes that startups typically make? I'm going to help you today. Things that you need to know. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining me today. This is Eli. Today we're going to be talking about startups. All the mistakes that you can make, all the mistakes you might make, and all the mistakes that you should completely avoid. That's what we're going to talk about today, and that's what we're going to get into. So let's get into it. But before we do that, don't forget to share, like, subscribe, hit that bell notification if you haven't already. There's more content that I'm pushing out. I'd also like to hear from you. If you have anything you'd like to share, maybe questions, maybe answers, leave them in the comments. So you're starting a new company, or you're thinking about starting a new company, and it's exciting, but you're not really keen on what's about to come, and you're not really familiar with the steps that it takes and the pitfalls along the way. Starting a company can be super exciting, but it can also be super scary. I know, starting my own company over 15 years ago, and starting out, I really didn't know what to look out for and how to manage, and I'm still learning. It's always a learning process. You never stop learning, you just grow and grow. That being said, while you are going to grow, some things you need to keep in mind. Do you have to keep them in mind religiously? No, it's not a perfect science, but this is more or less a pathway. And the pathway is more like if you're veering a little bit to the left, to the right, it's fine as long as you're on the right path. But I'm going to try to help you and give you some advice on how exactly to market and to brand properly from the get-go. So top of the list today. The first thing I want to talk about is not having a clear brand guideline for your company in terms of strategy. It's three things: who, what, how. Who are you? What do you stand for? And how do you want people to perceive or see you in the market? Without a clear purpose, it's going to be very hard, and image, for clients to connect with the brand on so many levels. There are emotional levels, intellectual levels, philosophical levels, aesthetic levels. And because of that, it becomes really easy for clients to forget who you are or mix you up with other competitors. The who, what, how is always top of mind when developing this. So here's a tip. Take time to figure out your brand's mission, its values, its personality. Write them down. Put them somewhere where you always remember to stay on track and never stray and forget. Because remember, what you're really building is its own entity. It's important that this entity develop and flourish like an infant into something more mature over time. But if you forget the whole purpose of why you started, you could end up becoming somebody completely different that you did not set out to be. Now, that doesn't mean there shouldn't be any flexibility. Flexibility is a good thing. But when you stray and the product itself is no longer being represented by this mission, that's where you have to either pivot to a new brand or re-examine exactly the identity of the brand and perhaps fix and go backwards. So let me give you an example of what a brand does when it talks about its identity. Airbnb is actually one of not just aesthetically pleasing brands, but their strategy and identity was always about belonging anywhere. In fact, I think that's their motto, to belong anywhere. What they didn't want was for you to just feel like you could go to this place and stay, or stay here or stay there. It wasn't like a moving hotel. The belong anywhere mantra for them was that wherever you go, you will perceive it as home. That is an identity thing that they built on when they did Airbnb. Many hotels, many motels exist. We all know them. But Airbnb couldn't be in one place. They had to be everywhere. Problem with everywhere is not home. Airbnb wanted to change that. Number two, I think, is something a lot of startups do in terms of making mistakes, is that they target often too broad of an audience. They try to reach everyone. The problem with that is that it makes your message too broad, too general. It's less appealing. You want to find that group that you know you're targeting. And if it's too broad, it can dilute the entire brand and its identity. So you have to figure out which group you're actually going after. Successful brands start by focusing on a specific type of customer, understanding the things that they need, creating messages that speak directly to them. I can't tell you how many companies I know don't understand that you can't go too broad. You need to focus specifically on that particular group that you're going after. And from there, you could potentially grow. So what's the tip? The tip is simple. Start with a small and specific group. Design your marketing just for them. Once you've built for this group, then you could start expanding to others. But always keep them in mind at the beginning. So what's an example of a successful brand that did that focused on that one group? Glossier. They're a beauty brand. And what did they do? Well, they were mainly targeting young women who were interested in skincare and were predominantly on social media. Two things. Well, three. They built a loyal community, and as they grew, they began to expand their audience. But the one thing about them is that they always stayed true to their original vision. Simple skincare, young women that love social media. You see how they identified those three things? Things. Tip number 3 is inconsistent visual and verbal messaging. Changing your logo on the fly, changing the colors, or the way you even talk about your brand. I mean, this can confuse people. It can confuse your clients and potential customers, and the brand would ultimately look and feel untrustworthy. People like patterns. People like when you're consistent. Being consistent across all platforms, it helps people recognize and trust your brand. I can't tell you that enough. There has to be a cohesion, a harmony in everything that this company represents. Let's use me for example. If I'm meeting you in private and you meet Eli, and Eli in private is one way. He's, let's say, all these things. He's nice, he's this, and on and on and on. I really am. Believe me. But in public, he's a different way. You see how when you see me in private and in public, you might get a, wow, this person is not consistent with who they are. They're actually two-faced. It's much worse when you're introducing yourself early on in a friendship, let alone to a client. And so the way you dress, the way you talk, it's no different for a company. You have to stay consistent. If you're using particular colors, don't suddenly flip and use bizarre colors. People pick up on that. So what's the tip? Create a clear style for your brand, logo, colors, tone of voice, and stick to it. Everywhere. I mean everywhere. Social media, your website, on YouTube, anywhere. Make sure you stick to that brand and the guidelines that you drew out. You want to stay consistent, always. This doesn't mean you're necessarily confined to not being original, but you got to start it out that way. And in the beginning, a lot of people will forgive, but not when you're way out in the beginning. It's okay when people start to see that, oh, you've pivoted a little bit from this yellow to that yellow. But if you pivot from a yellow to a purple, you can imagine how some people are like, wow, they haven't really thought this through yet. A really good example of this is the company Spotify. They use really bright colors, and it comes off very friendly. The tone, the bold design, I mean, from its apps to its ads, everything on social media. I mean, this makes their brand easy to spot. Spotify. And it keeps customers coming back again. So the tone, the colors, and the consistency that they keep, it's a winning recipe, I'm telling you. I'm really trying to help. I really am. The 4th tip is really more pathological. It's about overlooking those emotional connections that you need to make. Startups, they often focus too much on what the product does, and they forget to connect with customers like on a personal level. I'm guilty of that. People are more likely to stay loyal to brands that make them feel something. It's a fact. They want to feel inspired. They want to feel like a brand makes them happy. Sometimes they even want to feel understood. One way or another, you can't get around this. You have to make the customers that you're going after, that small group, have a sense of emotional connection, don't overlook that. So what's a tip? Show customers how much your brand, can make their lives better. Use stories, testimonials, real life examples to connect. You'll find that a lot of your clients will resonate with you. And a lot of the loyalty, believe it or not, is because of that emotional connection. You know who does this really well? Nike. They do this really well. Nike's more than just a brand about sports. They have a tagline, just do it. And what their aim is, their products can help anyone from beginner to pro. And a lot of people that you see in athletics on a professional level wearing sneakers, well, why is it that people love to follow their favorite athlete and buy the same kind of merchandise? There's an emotional connection. Why? Because if I had those shoes that he has, I could maybe become that person. Now, it's deceptive because, yes, some people clearly will never become Michael Jordan, but that doesn't mean that you can't have the same kind of equipment that Michael Jordan has. What Nike does really well is they help you push past the limit when they say just do it, and to achieve those goals and to reach beyond what you can do. And that's an emotional call to action, and they know that. So when they say just do it, they really mean it. Just do it. Get up, go, do something. And it's almost a challenge to get up and become better. So this is the final tip for all those startups that are just starting out. Do not neglect long-term brand strategy. Some startups focus too much on quick wins. Like viral ads, fast sales, and they're not thinking about how they're going to grow their brand over time. A strong brand, it focuses on building trust, keeping customers for the long haul. It's about sticking it out and having a plan that goes beyond 1 year, 2 years. This is something that even I'm learning, especially on this YouTube channel, by the way. It's planning for the future. It's creating consistent stories and staying connected with customers. I don't want to just look for quick wins, and neither should you. Investing in making the brand valuable over time, that would be my tip. I suppose that the company that I feel does this really, really well is Apple. They focused on simplicity and innovation from the start. They make excellent products. Their marketing is super sleek and memorable. And they built a loyal customer base ever since Steve Jobs. Yes, granted, the iPhone was revolutionary, but they've remained consistent. I wonder if they're not remaining too consistent. That would be my only worry. Their product works. It's an ecosystem. And you know what? It has kept their clients engaged for years. People are still lining up. Not only the consistency, but the kind of story and strategy that they have on a long-term basis. They have Steve Jobs to thank for that. He's the one that understood what all the other phone manufacturers didn't. And now guess what? None of our phones look the same. They are all versions of an iPhone. It's not shocking. It was probably part of a long-term business strategy and one that they implemented Apple very well and have stuck to. So thank you for joining me today. I hope these tips for the startups really helped out and consolidate things. I know it's very little. We can expand into each one of them into another video. So just make sure you stick around. And don't forget, you could always subscribe, and I would really appreciate a like and a share if you can to your friends or to other businesses that you know. And hit that notification bell. It really helps me and gets my views out. As always, thank you. Have yourselves a great day. Peace. Oh, and one more thing. Sorry about that. Don't forget to follow me on my socials. Now, peace.